Imagine this. Ancient Athens. You've got sunlight hitting the marble porch of the King Archon, the place where legal cases get handled.
Right, the center of legal action.
And right there, two figures bump into each other. One's there because, well, he's facing some pretty serious charges.
And the other, he's actually bringing a truly startling accusation of his own.
That's the scene Plato sets for us. So on one side, you have Socrates, the philosopher you probably know. He's been formally accused by this younger guy, Miletus. The charge, impiety.
Which was a capital offense, potentially.
Exactly. Okay. Miletus claims Socrates corrupts the youth, invents new gods, denies the old ones, pointing partly to Socrates' talk about his personal divine sign or voice. Heavy stuff back then.
Definitely. And then you have Euthyphro. The text presents him as someone who really fancies himself an expert, a diviner, someone with, precise knowledge of divine matters.
And he is there to prosecute, get this, his own father.
His own father. An elderly man, too. The story Euthyphro gives is pretty stark.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Okay, so his father had this dependent worker on their land out on Naxos. This worker killed a domestic slave in a drunken rage or something.
Okay.
So Euthyphro's father ties the worker up hand and foot and basically just tosses him in a ditch while he sends someone all the way back to Athens to ask the religious authorities what he should do.
Leaves him in a ditch.
Leaves him in a ditch. But the messenger was slow. Conditions were bad, and the poor guy died in the ditch from hunger and cold before any word came back from Athens.
Wow.
And Euthyphro's position is firm. This was an unjust killing, a pollution. It doesn't matter who the victim was or that the killer was his father.
He's utterly convinced prosecuting his own father is the pious, the holy thing to do, and crucially that he isn't being impious by doing it.
Right. The confidence is staggering.
So you've got Socrates literally on trial for impiety, desperately needing to figure out what piety actually is.
And he runs into Euthyphro, this guy who not only claims perfect knowledge of it, but is acting on that knowledge in, the most extreme way imaginable.
It's just a perfect, slightly ironic setup for a philosophical discussion.
It really is. And that's the core of our deep dive today. We're stepping into Plato's dialogue, the Euthyphro, to unpack this whole conversation.
Our mission, basically, is to follow Socrates and Euthyphro as they grapple with the question, what is piety?
And maybe see why defining these fundamental, seemingly simple concepts is actually a much deeper and trickier philosophical puzzle than you might think.
Okay, let's get into it. Socrates' first reaction when he hears Euthyphro's absolute confidence, his claimed wisdom, it's pretty classic Socrates.
Oh, yeah. He lays the irony on thick. He pretends to be just amazed by Euthyphro's insight.
He says something like, wow, I should become your student. You're the expert.
Exactly. If anyone can teach me about piety so I can defend myself against Miletus, it must be you. He even jokes, doesn't he?
Yeah, he says maybe Miletus should be indicting Euthyphro instead, since Euthyphro is doing something way more radical and claiming divine certainty about it.
Right. He says, if you approve of him, you are to approve of me. But if you disapprove, you should begin by indicting him who is my teacher.
He's using that Socratic irony, poking at the confidence.
Setting up the inquiry. So Euthyphro, feeling pretty good about himself, offers his first definition of piety.
And it's very direct. He basically says piety is, doing as I am doing.
Just like that.
Yep. Doing as I am doing. That is to say, prosecuting anyone who is guilty of murder, sacrilege, or of any similar crime, whether he be your father or mother. He just points to his own action.
And he tries to back this up, right, with mythology.
Immediately. Which is interesting. He brings up Zeus tying up his father Kronos and Kronos punishing his father Uranus. He says, look, the gods did it. They punished their own relatives for wrongdoing, so I'm just following their lead.
This is actually a key point the text highlights, doesn't it? Socrates' reaction to these stories.
It is. The text notes Socrates is uncomfortable with these traditional tales of the gods fighting, being violent, acting unjustly sometimes. It even suggests this discomfort might be why he's facing the impiety charge in the first place, because he questions these conventional, sometimes contradictory stories about the gods.
Yeah, that's a really interesting layer to consider. So Euthyphro uses his own action as an example and backs it with, questionable myths. What's Socrates' issue with this first definition?
It's fundamental, really. He says, look, you haven't given me the definition of piety itself, the actual concept. You've just given me an example of something you think is pious.
Right. Socrates wants the general standard, the form of piety, that single characteristic that makes all pious actions pious.
He needs that standard so he can use it to judge any action, not just yours.
Okay. Like the difference between pointing to a red thing and defining what redness is.
Yeah,
You need the rule, not just one case.
exactly. So, first attempt fails. It's an example, not a definition. Euthyphro needs to generalize. What's his second try?
This time he goes broader. Piety, then, is that which is dear to the gods, and impiety is that which is not dear to them.
Okay, what is dear to the gods? That sounds a bit more like a general principle. How does Socrates test that one?
He immediately brings up the awkward fact of divine disagreement. He gets Euthyphro to admit, based on the very myths Euthyphro seems to accept, that the gods aren't exactly harmonious.
Right, they fight, they have enemies, they disagree, just like humans do.
And Socrates pushes on what they disagree about. He uses a neat analogy with human arguments.
It's about measurement.
Yeah. If we disagree about length or weight, we can just measure it, right? Use a ruler, use scales, problem solved.
Okay.
But disagreements about things like justice, beauty, good, evil, those are the things that cause deep quarrels among people because there's no simple calculation to settle them.
And Euthyphro agrees the gods squabble about those exact same kinds of things: justice, beauty, goodness, honor.
Exactly. So here's the problem Socrates raises. If the gods disagree on these fundamental values, then the very same action could be loved by one god, but hated by another.
Like Euthyphro prosecuting his father. Maybe Zeus, who punished his dad, thinks it's great, loves it.
Right. But maybe Kronos or Uranus, who are on the receiving end, would absolutely hate it, find it impious.
So according to Euthyphro's second definition, the same action could be both pious, loved by some gods, and impious, hated by others at the same time.
Which is a contradiction. It can't be the single, consistent standard Socrates is searching for. It breaks down.
Okay, so what is dear to the gods hits this major snag because the gods themselves don't agree. How do they try to fix that?
Well, they revise it to try and get around the disagreement. Socrates guides him towards this, really. The amended definition becomes what all the gods love is pious, and what they all hate is impious.
Ah, requiring unanimity.
Exactly. Anything where there's disagreement, well, that's neither pious nor impious, or maybe both, but it doesn't fit this refined definition. It tries to establish consistency based on unanimous divine approval.
Okay, what all the gods love is pious. That seems to solve the disagreement issue, doesn't it?
It solves that issue, but it walks right into a different, much deeper problem. This leads directly to the most famous part of the dialogue, what we now call the Euthyphro dilemma.
Right, this is the big one.
Socrates asks the absolutely crucial question. Is the pious or holy beloved by the gods because it is holy? Or is it holy because it is beloved of the gods?
That takes a second to unpack. It's forcing a distinction, right, between something having inherent value and something having value only because someone says it does or likes it.
Precisely. Is piety inherently good, and that's why the gods love it? Or is it just whatever the gods happen to collectively decide to love?
The classic, is it good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is good? It's a fundamental question. How does Socrates help Euthyphro see this distinction?
He uses some clever analogies to make the logical point clearer. He talks about carrying and being carried.
Okay.
Is a thing in the state of being carried because someone carries it? Or is someone carrying it because it's in the state of being carried? The answer seems obvious, right?
Yeah, it's being carried because someone is carrying it. The action causes the state.
Exactly. The act of carrying comes first. It causes the state of being carried.
Yeah.
Same with seeing and being seen.
A thing is being seen because someone sees it. It's visible because of the seeing. The act causes the state.
Got it. So applying that logic.
Yeah.
A thing is in the state of being loved because someone loves it.
Yeah.
The act of loving precedes and causes the state of being loved.
Okay, that makes sense. The loving comes first.
Right.
Yeah.
Now apply this back to piety. Socrates asks Euthyphro, do the gods love piety because it is pious, or is it pious because they love it?
And what does Euthyphro say?
Euthyphro answers pretty quickly, actually. He says piety is loved by the gods because it is pious or holy. Its inherent quality, its holiness, is the reason the gods love it.
Okay, so piety has some quality in itself that attracts the gods' love. It's not just arbitrary.
Exactly. But now, Socrates brings the trap. Here's the contradiction with the definition, piety is what all the gods love. Based on the logic of being loved, the thing called God loved, what all the gods love, is in that state because the gods love it. Their act of loving causes it to be God-loved.
Right. Act causes state.
But based on what Euthyphro just agreed about piety itself, piety is loved by the gods because it is inherently holy. The inherent quality, holiness, causes the gods' love.
Ah, the cause and effect are reversed.
Exactly. If piety were the exact same thing as what is loved by all the gods, the reason for it being loved should be the same. But it's not. In one case, the loving causes the state, and the other, the inherent quality causes the loving.
So Socrates concludes that being loved by the gods isn't the essence of piety, it's just something that happens to it, an attribute.
Precisely. It's like saying, I don't know, a professor is someone who is listened to by students. Well, yeah, that's true about them. It's an effect. But it doesn't tell you what a professor is. Fundamentally, their knowledge, their teaching role.
Being loved by the gods is something true about piety, an accident or attribute, but it doesn't define its core nature, its essence. Socrates says, you told me something about piety, that it gets loved, but you didn't tell me what it is.
Exactly. You gave me an effect, not the cause or the essence.
Euthyphro must be feeling pretty cornered at this point. How does he react?
He definitely shows his frustration. He admits his arguments seem to turn around and walk away from him. He compares them to the moving statues supposedly made by Daedalus, Socrates' mythical ancestor.
Right, the arguments won't stay put.
And Socrates, even in this moment, can't resist a bit of playful irony. He suggests he must be an even greater craftsman than Daedalus because he makes other people's arguments walk away.
Huh, classic Socrates. But okay, the core problem remains. They still don't have a definition. Does Socrates just give up?
No, he encourages Euthyphro to try again. He prompts him, actually. He asks, okay, is the pious necessarily just?
And Euthyphro agrees.
Readily. Yes, piety is a form of justice.
Okay, then Socrates pushes. Is all justice pious? Or is piety only a part of justice? He uses that analogy like odd numbers are part of number, but not all numbers are odd.
Right. Is piety a subset of justice? Euthyphro agrees again, yes, piety is just a part of justice.
Okay, progress maybe. So piety is the part of justice that deals with what?
Socrates asks exactly that, which part? And Euthyphro offers a new definition. Piety is the part of justice which attends to the gods, as there is the other part of justice which attends to men.
So justice has two sides, how we treat other people and how we treat the gods. Piety is the God-focused part.
That's the idea, attending to the gods.
Attending to, that seems clear, but what does attending actually mean here? Socrates questions this word, doesn't he?
He does. He presses on it. He uses examples of how we attend to other things, like horsemanship is attending to horses, and it aims to benefit or improve them.
Right. The huntsman's art attends to dogs, aims to benefit them. The ox herd attends to oxen for their benefit. In these cases, attending to means care, service, aiming for the good of the one being attended to.
So the million drachma question becomes, does our attending to the gods, our piety, somehow benefit or improve the gods? Do our pious actions make the gods better off?
And Euthyphro's reaction?
He's very firm here. Absolutely not. He says that's almost blasphemous to suggest.
Yeah.
The gods are perfect. They don't need our help or improvement.
Okay, so that's not what he meant by attending. He clarifies, right?
Yes, he backtracks. He says he meant attending, more like how servants attend to their masters, a kind of ministration or service, doing their bidding, essentially.
Okay, like service. But Socrates keeps pushing. Service towards what end? What's the goal or purpose of this service to the gods?
He uses analogies again. Medicine aims for health. Shipbuilding aims for ships. What great work do the gods accomplish using us as their servants? What's the final product of our piety as service?
And Euthyphro gets vague again.
Very vague. He just says they accomplish many and fair works. He can't really pin down the specific outcome of our service for the gods.
So he struggles to articulate the goal, and then he simplifies again.
He does. He seems to fall back on a more traditional, practical understanding. He says piety is basically learning how to please the gods in word and deed by prayers and sacrifices.
Back to religious practice.
And he adds that doing this correctly, this kind of piety, is what saves families and states. It has good outcomes for us.
Okay, so piety is about prayer and sacrifice, aimed at pleasing the gods. How does Socrates rephrase this?
He neatly sums it up. He calls it a science of asking and giving.
Asking and giving.
Yeah. We ask the gods for what we want through prayer, and we give them what they want through sacrifices and offerings. Socrates even calls it an art which gods and men have of doing business with one another.
A transaction, like a marketplace between humans and gods. We get good stuff from them.
Right, all the good things we have.
And in return, we give them. What exactly do we give the gods in this deal? That seems like the crucial question.
It is, Socrates asks. What good thing do we actually give them that benefits them in return for all the good they give us?
And Euthyphro's answer is,
We give them tributes of honor, and crucially, what pleases them.
what pleases them. There it is again.
Exactly. And Socrates immediately points out the circle. Saying piety is giving the gods what pleases them is pretty much identical to saying piety is what is dear to the gods.
Which was the second definition. The one they already showed was insufficient because it just described an attribute being loved by the gods, not the fundamental essence of piety itself.
They've gone completely in a circle. The argument has, as Socrates says, come round to the same point. It must be incredibly frustrating.
Euthyphro even admits that one of their earlier points must be wrong, but they can't figure out which one or how to break out of the loop.
It really is a picture of philosophical deadlock. Socrates, despite his own frustration, makes one last appeal. He almost begs Euthyphro,
This supposed expert.
the man prosecuting his own father, based on this certain knowledge, to please share this knowledge. He compares him to Proteus, the shape-shifting sea god you had to hold on to tightly to get the truth.
He insists, you must know, otherwise you wouldn't dare do what you're doing.
It's a powerful plea, but Euthyphro offers nothing new, no breakthrough.
Instead, he just leaves.
He just says, "Oh, another time, Socrates, for I am in a hurry and must go now." And he walks away, abandons the conversation entirely.
Wow. Just leaves him hanging, and Socrates is left.
Left in despair, as he puts it, still ignorant of what piety truly is, and therefore he feels no better equipped to defend himself against Meletus's charge than he was before this whole encounter. The dialogue ends without an answer.
So, after going through all that, what does this ancient, seemingly failed conversation mean for you, listening today? Why should we care about this dialogue that doesn't even reach a conclusion?
Well, for one thing, it's a masterclass in the Socratic method, isn't it? This relentless questioning, poking holes in assumptions, revealing that maybe we don't know what we think we know.
It shows how hard it is to define these big, abstract concepts we use all the time. Piety, sure, but also justice, beauty, goodness, morality itself.
We often give examples, like Euthyphro did, or describe effects, but pinning down the core essence, that's tough.
And then there's the Euthyphro dilemma itself. Is something holy because the gods love it, or do they love it because it's holy?
That question echoes down through the centuries. It's not just about Greek gods. It's a fundamental philosophical puzzle about morality and authority.
Is something right just because someone in charge says so, whether it's God or the law or just, popular opinion?
Or are some things inherently right or wrong, regardless of who commands or approves of them? It really forces you to think about the foundation of your own values.
Are we just trying to please an external authority, or are we trying to understand the reason why something is good or right in itself? It's a huge challenge to think critically, to seek real understanding beyond just following rules.
Absolutely. So, to quickly recap our deep dive, we saw Socrates push Euthyphro through multiple attempts to define piety.
Yeah, first is just what I'm doing, an example. Then what's dear to the gods failed due to disagreement.
Then, what all the gods love, which led to the dilemma, showing it was an attribute, not the essence.
And finally, as attending to the gods like servants, through prayer and sacrifice, which basically circled back to what pleases them.
And none of them held up under scrutiny. The conversation and our exploration today ends without that neat definition of what is piety. The supposed expert couldn't provide one.
So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. If piety isn't just copying myths or pleasing gods or doing rituals like a business transaction, what is the true essence of holiness or living a genuinely pious life?
Is it even something that can be captured in a single neat definition? Or does understanding it require something more, something different altogether?